The silence was complete. Commander Zixthala floated in the wreckage of what had been the Cathari research vessel Luminous Path just hours before. Now it was nothing but twisted metal and broken dreams scattered across the dark void of space. Zixthala's biosuit beeped softly, showing oxygen levels that made their stomach turn cold. 47 hours remaining. Maybe less if they moved around too much. The Cathari had always been proud of their advanced life support systems, but even the best technology had limits. Through the clear helmet, Zixthala could see the debris field stretching in all directions. Pieces of their ship tumbled slowly through space, catching distant starlight like broken mirrors. The quantum drive that had carried them across the galaxy was now a twisted chunk of useless metal. The communication array that could have reached Cathari space was gone completely. The spatial anomaly that destroyed them had appeared without warning. One moment they were conducting routine scans of an empty system. The next, reality seemed to tear itself apart around them. The ship's sensors had screamed warnings in 17 different languages before going silent forever. Zixthala had been in the observation deck when it happened. The emergency bulkheads had sealed automatically, trapping them in a pocket of safety while the rest of the ship died around them. They had listened to their crew's final communications through the internal network until that too went dark. Captain Velmoon had died trying to reach the escape pods. Science Officer Tyrnus had been crushed when the main computer core exploded. Engineer Kickstal had stayed at their post until the very end, trying to save the quantum drive. All of them were gone now, their bodies lost to the void. The Cathari were an old species. They had been traveling between stars when most other races were still discovering fire. Their technology was the envy of the galaxy, their science unmatched, their philosophy refined through thousands of years of civilization. They did not panic in crisis. They did not abandon their posts. They faced death with dignity. But floating alone in the wreckage, dignity felt like cold comfort. Zixthala activated their suit's computer and began checking their options. The nearest Cathari outpost was 47 light-years away. Even their fastest ships would take weeks to reach this position, assuming anyone even knew where to look. The emergency beacon had been destroyed with the rest of the communication equipment. Their suit had small thrusters for movement, but the fuel would last maybe 6 hours of continuous use. Not nearly enough to reach anything. The life support would keep them alive for less than 2 days. After that, they would simply drift through space forever. Another piece of debris in an empty system. The suit's computer offered to calculate the exact time of death based on oxygen consumption and carbon dioxide buildup. Zixthala declined the offer. Some information was better left unknown. Instead, they began composing their final scientific log. If their body was ever found, the data might prove useful to future researchers. The Cathari believed in the advancement of knowledge above all else. Even in death, they could contribute to the greater understanding of the universe. Personal log of Commander Zixthala, Cathari Exploration Corps, final entry. They spoke into the suit's recorder. The spatial anomaly encountered in system designation 7749 Delta appears to be a quantum cascade failure of unknown origin. Recommend extreme caution for any future expeditions to this region. They paused, looking out at the stars. The same stars their people had been studying for millennia. The same stars that would continue burning long after every Cathari was dust and memory. The luminous path was destroyed at 1432 ship time. All crew lost except myself. I estimate my own survival time at less than 47 hours. Their voice remained steady, professional. That was the Cathari way, but as they floated in the darkness, Zixthala felt something their species rarely acknowledged. Loneliness. Not just the absence of others, but the deep ache of being utterly cut off from everything they had ever known. No rescue was coming. No miracle would save them. They would die alone in the cold between stars. The debris field around them told the story of their ship's final moments. The crew quarters had been vented to space first. The engineering section had suffered multiple explosions. The bridge was simply gone, torn away completely by forces that defied understanding. Zixthala had studied death before, of course. It was a natural part of existence, as predictable as stellar formation or planetary cooling. Their philosophy taught acceptance of all natural processes. Death was simply the end of one pattern and the beginning of another. But knowing about death and facing it alone were very different things. The suit's heating system worked quietly to keep them warm, but Zixthala could feel the cold of space pressing in around them. Not just the physical cold, but the vast emptiness that surrounded every living thing in the universe. Space was patient. It would claim everything eventually. They thought about their family back on the Cathari homeworld. Their life partner Mixvera, working in the Grand Archive. Their offspring Nixkala, studying quantum mechanics at the Academy. They would wait for word from the luminous path that would never come. Eventually, the ship would be declared lost with all hands. Their names would be added to the Memorial of Deep Exploration, another line in the long list of Cathari who had ventured too far from home. The stars offered no comfort. They were beautiful but cold and distant. Each one represented possibilities that Zixthala would never explore, solar systems they would never catalog, discoveries they would never make. Their suit beeped again. 46 hours and 37 minutes of oxygen remaining. Zixthala closed their eyes and tried to meditate, falling back on centuries of Cathari mental training. Find peace in acceptance. Embrace the natural order. Death was simply another state of being, no more frightening than sleep. But the meditation would not come. Instead, they found themselves thinking about all the things left undone. The research projects half finished. The star charts incomplete. The promise to visit the crystal gardens on Veltaris next season. Small things that had seemed unimportant when time felt infinite. The wreckage around them continued its slow dance through space. Pieces of their ship, their crew, their life, all tumbling together in the darkness. Soon they would be part of that dance too. Another fragment in the void. Zixthala opened their eyes and looked out at the universe one more time. It was vast beyond imagination, filled with wonders they would never see. But for now, in this moment, it was also completely empty. They were alone. The suit's systems hummed quietly, counting down the hours until silence would claim everything. In the distance, stars burned with ancient light, indifferent to one small life about to end between them. Zixthala began their final scientific observations, determined that their last act would be useful to someone somewhere someday. It was the Kethari way. Even facing death, knowledge mattered most. But deep in their hearts, they wished desperately that someone, anyone, might find them before the darkness won. 3 days had passed since the destruction of the luminous path. Zixthala's oxygen gauge showed numbers that made their hands shake. 18 hours remaining. The cold was getting worse despite the suit's heating system. Soon, they would have to choose between warmth and extending their air supply. The Cathari had always prided themselves on rational thinking, even in crisis. But floating alone in the wreckage, rationality felt like a luxury they could not afford. Fear had crept in during the long hours of darkness between stars. They had finished recording everything useful about the spatial anomaly. Their scientific observations were complete, stored in the suit's memory core. If anyone ever found their body, the data might save other ships from the same fate. It was a small comfort, but better than nothing. The debris field had spread out during the days of drifting. What had once been a tight cluster of wreckage now stretched across thousands of kilometers of space. Pieces of their ship, their crew, their life, all growing farther apart with each passing hour. Zixthala was checking their suit's power levels when something impossible happened. A sound came through their helmet speakers. Not the gentle hum of life support or the soft beeping of status alerts. This was different. A crackling, static-filled noise that made no sense. At first, they thought the suit's communication system was failing. Cathari technology was reliable, but even the best equipment could break down. They were about to switch off the receivers to save power when the static resolved into something even more impossible. A voice, speaking in a language they had never heard before. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Nations Space Command Ship Determination. We are receiving your distress beacon on emergency frequencies. Please respond if you are able. Zixthala stared at their communication display in confusion. They had not sent any distress beacon. Their ship's emergency systems had been destroyed along with everything else. More importantly, they had never heard of this United Nations or any species that called themselves humans. The transmission was primitive beyond belief. Instead of quantum entanglement or subspace compression, these beings were using simple electromagnetic radiation, radio waves that moved at light speed, inefficient and crude, the kind of technology the Cathari had abandoned when they first reached the stars thousands of years ago. But the signal was real. Someone was out there. Zixathala's translator struggled with the alien language. The sounds were harsh and full of unnecessary consonants. The grammar seemed backwards and inefficient. But slowly, meaning began to emerge from the chaos. These humans claimed to have detected some kind of signal from the debris field. They were approaching to investigate. The voice on the radio sounded concerned, even worried. That surprised Zixathala. Most advanced species would simply catalog the wreckage and move on. With trembling fingers, Zixathala activated their suit's emergency transmitter. It had very little power, designed only for close-range communication with their ship. But maybe if these humans were near enough, the signal might reach them. Following first contact protocols developed over thousands of years of Cathari exploration, they began with mathematics. Simple concepts that any intelligent species would understand. 1 + 1 = 2. The first 10 prime numbers. The value of pi to 15 decimal places. The response came faster than they expected. Unknown person. This is determination. We received your transmission. We are sending the same numbers back to show we understand. Please hold on. We are coming to help you. Help. Such a simple word, but it filled Zixathala with emotions they did not expect. Hope first and strongest, but also confusion. Why would these primitive aliens risk themselves for a complete stranger? In the galaxy's long history, most species looked after their own kind first. Over the next several hours, the radio conversations continued. The humans seemed determined to establish communication despite the language barriers. They sent mathematical proofs and scientific constants. They transmitted star charts showing their position. They even played what they called music, organized sound patterns that seemed to serve no practical purpose but were somehow pleasing. Captain Vasquez spoke to them personally several times. Her voice was warm and reassuring in a way that Zixathala found surprising. Most ship commanders they knew were formal and distant. This human sounded like she actually cared about helping them. "We have you on our sensors now," she said during one transmission. "We can see the debris field. Are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" The question caught Zixathala off guard. Of course they needed help. Their ship was destroyed, their crew was dead, and they were dying slowly in a broken biosuit. But somehow having someone ask about their condition made everything feel more real. "I am damaged," they replied, using simple words their translator could handle. "My ship is gone. My people are gone. I have little time remaining." "Understood. We're pushing our engines as hard as we can. Hold on just a little longer. Nobody dies alone out here if we can help it." That phrase stuck with Zixathala. Nobody dies alone. It seemed to be more than just words to these humans. It sounded like a promise. As the hours passed, the human ship grew closer. Through their suit's sensors, Zixathala began to make out details of the approaching vessel. It was crude compared to Cathari designs, all angles and exposed components. The hull looked like it was held together with metal patches and determination. But it was moving fast, faster than should be safe for such a primitive design. "Determination, this is Chief Engineer Rodriguez," came another voice over the radio. "We're running the fusion drives at 112%. The containment fields are holding, but I can't guarantee how long." "Keep pushing, Rodriguez," Captain Vasquez replied. "We've got someone out here who needs help." Zixathala listened to the crew communications with growing amazement. These humans were risking their own ship, their own lives to rescue someone they had never met. Someone from a species they had never encountered. It went against every principle of rational self-preservation, but somehow it felt right. The human ship continued its approach, systems straining beyond their design limits. Through the radio chatter, Zixathala learned that the Determination was an exploration vessel, similar to their own luminous path. But where Cathari ships were built for elegance and efficiency, this human craft seemed designed for pure stubborn endurance. "We have visual contact," reported someone called Dr. Chen. "I can see their suit on the long-range cameras. They're alive, but the bio readings are concerning." "How concerning?" asked Captain Vasquez. "Life support is failing. Power levels are critical. We need to get them aboard quickly." Zixathala looked at their own displays. 14 hours of air remaining. The humans were close, but would they be close enough? "Unknown person, this is Captain Vasquez. We are less than 6 hours away from your position. We will reach you in time. I promise you that." Another promise. These humans seemed to make them easily, but something in the captain's voice made Zixathala believe she meant every word. For the first time in 3 days, they allowed themselves to hope. Maybe, just maybe, they would not die alone in the darkness between stars. Maybe these strange, primitive, wonderful humans would keep their promise. The radio continued to crackle with activity as the human ship approached. Zixthala closed their eyes and listened to the alien voices planning their rescue. It sounded like organized chaos, but there was something reassuring about it. Someone cared whether they lived or died. After a lifetime among the cool, rational Cathari, that realization hit them like a physical blow. These humans, whoever they were, had decided that one alien life was worth risking their entire ship. Zixthala began to think they were about to learn something important about the nature of intelligence in the universe. The human ship determination looked even more impossible up close. Zixthala watched through their helmet as the vessel approached the debris field, moving with careful precision between the floating pieces of their destroyed ship. The hull was a patchwork of different metals, obviously repaired many times with whatever materials were available. But what amazed them most was not the ship's crude construction. It was the fact that it had arrived at all. "Rescue team, prepare for EVA," Captain Vasquez's voice crackled over the radio. "Remember, we don't know their biology or how fragile they might be. Gentle movements only." Zixthala watched as several figures in bulky white suits emerged from the human ship. Their spacesuits looked primitive compared to Cathari biosuits, but they moved with confidence through the debris field. One of them carried what appeared to be cutting tools. Another had a large bag of equipment. "Unknown friend, this is Chief Rodriguez," came a new voice, speaking slowly and clearly. "We are coming to help you. Do not be afraid. We will be very careful." The Cathari had protocols for first contact situations, of course. Thousands of years of exploring the galaxy had taught them to be cautious with unknown species. But floating helpless in a failing life support system, protocols seemed less important than survival. "I understand," Zixthala replied. "I am grateful for your help." The lead human reached them within minutes, moving with practiced ease through zero gravity. Up close, Zixthala could see a face through the helmet's faceplate. The human looked nothing like any species they had ever encountered. Strange features, small eyes and skin that seemed almost pink in the suit's lights. But the expression on that alien face was unmistakably kind. "Hello there," the human said, speaking directly into their short-range communicator. "I'm Chief Rodriguez. We're going to get you out of here, okay?" The human's movements were careful and deliberate as they examined Zixthala's biosuit. Other team members spread out through the debris field, apparently looking for anything that might be salvageable. Their efficiency was impressive, even if their equipment was primitive. "Your life support is in bad shape," Rodriguez observed, checking readings on a handheld device. "We need to get you to our ship quickly. Can you move under your own power?" Zixthala tested their suit's thrusters. The fuel gauge showed almost empty, but there was enough for a short journey. "I can move, but not far." "That's okay. We'll help you." What followed was the most terrifying and amazing rescue operation Zixthala had ever seen. The humans used magnetic grapples and safety lines to create a path through the debris field. When Zixthala's thrusters ran out of fuel halfway to the ship, two of the rescue team simply grabbed onto their suit and carried them the rest of the way. It violated every safety protocol the Cathari had ever developed. But it worked. The human ship's airlock was barely large enough to fit their biosuit. The atmosphere was all wrong for Cathari physiology. The temperature was too warm and the air mixture would be toxic. But the humans had prepared for this. "We've set up a clean room in Medical Bay too," announced someone called Dr. Chen over the intercom. Atmospheric composition adjusted based on spectral analysis of their suit's exhaust. Zixthala was amazed. These primitive beings had analyzed their biosuit's waste gases and figured out what kind of air they needed to breathe. In less than 6 hours, the medical bay was a wonder of improvised engineering. The humans had somehow reconfigured their equipment to work with alien physiology they had never seen before. Monitoring devices jury-rigged with spare parts. Life support systems rebuilt on the fly. Everything held together with what appeared to be some kind of silvery tape. "It's not pretty," admitted Dr. Chen, "but it should keep you alive while we figure out the details." The doctor was a small human with kind eyes and gentle hands. They worked carefully to connect Cathari biosuit systems to human medical equipment, asking permission before every procedure. It was clear they had no idea what they were doing, but they were determined to try anyway. "Your biology is fascinating," the doctor said while checking Zixthala's vital signs. "Completely different from anything in our databases, but the basic principles are similar. Oxygen-based metabolism, carbon chemistry, neural activity patterns we recognize. Over the following hours, Zixthala learned more about humans than they had about any species in decades of exploration. These beings were young by galactic standards. They had only been traveling between stars for a few hundred years. Their technology was crude, their ships barely held together, their equipment constantly breaking down, but they had something the Cathari had never seen before. An absolute refusal to give up. When the makeshift life support system failed during the first night, Dr. Chen worked for 18 straight hours to fix it. When the atmospheric processor couldn't handle Cathari biochemistry, Chief Rodriguez rebuilt it, using spare parts from the ship's food processors. "Why are you doing this?" Zixthala asked during one of their medical examinations. "I am a stranger from an unknown species. Helping me gains you nothing." Dr. Chen looked surprised by the question. "You needed help. That's reason enough. But your crew is risking their safety for me. Your ship is using extra resources. Surely there must be some benefit you expect in return." The doctor was quiet for a long moment, apparently thinking about how to explain something obvious. "Look, I don't know much about your people or your culture, but where I come from, we have a saying. You don't leave someone behind if you can help it. Doesn't matter who they are or where they come from. If they need help and you can provide it, you do." It was such a simple concept, but it turned Zixthala's understanding of the universe upside down. In their experience, most species help their own kind first, their allies second, and strangers only, if there was clear benefit involved. These humans seemed to operate by completely different rules. Captain Vasquez visited the medical bay regularly, checking on their condition and making sure they had everything they needed. She was a small human with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. But when she spoke to Zixthala, her voice was always warm. "How are you feeling today?" she would ask. "Is there anything we can do to make you more comfortable?" During one visit, Zixthala worked up the courage to ask the question that had been bothering them. "Captain, why did your ship come to investigate the debris field? Surely you had more important missions." "We detected what looked like a distress signal," the captain replied. "Turned out to be feedback from your suit's emergency systems, but we didn't know that at the time. Standard procedure is to investigate any sign that someone might need help. Even if that someone is not human." Captain Vasquez looked at them with an expression that was part surprise and part sadness. "Especially then. The universe is a big, dangerous place. If we don't look out for each other, who will?" As the days passed, Zixthala's strength returned under the humans' careful care. The improvised medical equipment worked better than it had any right to. The crew shared their food, their entertainment, their company. They treated the alien visitor not as a curiosity or a burden, but as a person who had been in trouble and now needed help getting home. It was unlike anything in Zixthala's experience with other species, and it raised disturbing questions about everything they thought they knew about intelligence and civilization. These humans were primitive by galactic standards. Their ships were crude, their technology centuries behind the great powers. But they had something that might be more valuable than any advanced science. They had hearts that could not ignore suffering, no matter who was suffering. And as Zixthala recovered in the makeshift medical bay, listening to the crew's cheerful banter over the intercom, they began to suspect that the galaxy's understanding of what made a species advanced might need some serious revision. 2 weeks into the journey to the nearest human colony, Zixthala had become fascinated by their rescuers. The humans of the Determination were unlike any species they had studied in decades of exploration. They were loud, emotional, inefficient, and completely wonderful. The ship's routine was chaos compared to the ordered precision of Cathari vessels. Crew members argued about everything from navigation routes to what to have for dinner. They played games during off-duty hours, filling the corridors with laughter and shouting. They listened to music that had no apparent scientific purpose but somehow made everyone feel better. And through it all, they continued to care for one injured alien with the same dedication they would show their own family. Dr. Chen had rebuilt the medical bay's atmospheric systems 3 times to better accommodate Cathari physiology. Chief Rodriguez had spent his free time studying the salvaged pieces of their biosuit, not to steal the technology but to understand how to repair their personal communicator. "I think I can get this working again," he announced one morning, holding up the small device that would let Zixathala contact their people. It's quantum-based, way beyond our technology, but the power coupling is standard enough that I can jury-rig a connection to our systems. Why are you helping me contact my species? Zixathala asked. Once they know where I am, they will come for me. You will gain nothing from our meeting. Rodriguez looked at them with the same confused expression Zixathala had seen on other crew members when asked similar questions. You want to talk to your family, right? Let them know you're alive, that's what matters. It took him 3 days, but the communicator finally activated. The quantum entanglement systems came online, connecting across vast distances to reach Cathari space. When Zixathala heard the response from the Exploration Corps headquarters, they nearly wept with relief. Commander Zixathala, this is Control Central. We lost your signal 16 days ago. Report your status immediately. Speaking their own language again felt strange after weeks of using simple words the translation system could handle. Control Central, the luminous path was destroyed by spatial anomaly. All crew lost except myself. I am currently aboard an alien vessel receiving medical assistance. The silence that followed lasted long enough for Zixathala to worry the connection had failed. Finally, Control Central responded. Alien vessel? What species? What are their intentions? Are you being held prisoner? Negative on prisoner status. The aliens they rescued me from the debris field. They call themselves humans. They have been providing medical care and asking for nothing in return. Another long pause. Commander, that makes no logical sense. Unknown species do not risk their vessels to rescue strangers without some form of compensation expected. Zixathala looked around the medical bay that the humans had rebuilt just for them. Dr. Chen was working at a desk nearby, updating their treatment records with the same care they would give any patient. Outside in the corridor, they could hear crew members discussing the best route to a human colony, where their Cathari rescue ship could meet them safely. Control Central, I am sending you my full mission logs. The humans appear to operate by different logical principles than other species we have encountered. Over the following days, Zixathala watched the crew prepare for their arrival at the human colony. But instead of excitement about reaching their destination, many of them seemed sad about saying goodbye to their alien passenger. We're going to miss having you around, admitted Lieutenant Torres during one of their chess games. The humans had taught Zixathala several of their games, though they still lost more often than they won. You barely know me, Zixathala pointed out. We have been together for only 2 weeks, and we cannot even speak the same language properly. Time doesn't matter, Torres replied, moving a piece on the board. You're part of the crew now. That's how it works with us, part of the crew. The phrase stuck with Zixathala as they thought about everything they had observed during their recovery. These humans seemed to have an unlimited capacity for adopting others into their family groups. They had done it naturally, without conscious decision, simply because someone had needed help. During their conversations with Dr. Chen, they learned more about human evolution. The species had developed as social hunters, working in groups to survive on a dangerous planet. But unlike most pack hunters, they had evolved the ability to extend their protective instincts far beyond their original family groups. We call it pack mentality, the doctor explained during one of their medical examinations. But it's more flexible than that. Humans can form pack bonds with almost anything. Other humans, animals, even alien visitors who need medical care. That seems inefficient, Zixathala observed. Caring for every being you encounter would drain resources unnecessarily. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment, apparently trying to figure out how to explain something fundamental about human nature. Maybe it's inefficient, but it's who we are. A long time ago, our ancestors figured out that the more individuals you help survive, the better everyone's chances become. We never grew out of that instinct, even when those individuals are not human, especially then. The universe is a big place. If we're going to explore it safely, we need to be the kind of species others can trust. Through the ship's communication system, Zixathala listened to the crew's daily conversations. They talked about their families back on Earth, their hopes for future exploration missions, their concerns about mechanical problems that needed fixing. But they also talked about their alien passenger with the same warmth they showed their own shipmates. How's our Cathari friend doing today? Captain Vasquez would ask during morning briefings. Physical condition stable, Dr. Chen would report. But I think they're getting restless. They're used to having work to do. Can we find something useful for them to help with? Nobody likes feeling useless. It was such a small thing. But it demonstrated something that amazed Zixthala. These humans didn't just care about keeping them alive. They cared about keeping them happy and mentally healthy. They wanted their alien visitor to feel valuable and included. Chief Rodriguez eventually found a solution. We could use help updating our star charts. Your people obviously know this region of space better than we do. If you're willing to share some basic navigation data, it would make travel safer for everyone. Zixthala was happy to help, and working on the star charts gave them something productive to do during the long journey. But they noticed that the humans never pushed for advanced technology or scientific secrets. They asked only for information that would help prevent other ships from getting lost in dangerous areas. You could demand much more from me, they pointed out to Captain Vasquez. During one of their discussions, my people's technology is centuries ahead of yours. I have knowledge that could advance your civilization significantly. The captain considered this carefully before responding. Would sharing that knowledge be good for your people? Or would it cause problems between our species? I do not know. Then we won't ask for it. We rescued you because you needed help, not because we wanted something from you. When your people arrive, if they want to share technology or knowledge, that's their choice to make. It was a level of ethical consideration that Zixthala had rarely seen among the galaxy's older species. Most would have at least tried to gain some advantage from the situation. The humans seemed genuinely more concerned with doing the right thing than with advancing their own interests. As they approached the human colony, Zixthala realized they had learned something profound about intelligence and civilization. Technology and science were important, but they were not the only measures of how advanced a species could be. These humans, with their crude ships and primitive equipment, had mastered something that many older species had never discovered. They had learned how to care for others as extensions of themselves, regardless of species or origin. In the vast, dangerous universe, that might be the most valuable technology of all. The human colony of New Geneva was nothing like what Zixthala had expected. Instead of the simple frontier outpost they had imagined, they found a bustling community that seemed to welcome everyone. The orbital station was clearly built from salvaged parts and improvised materials, but it was warm and welcoming in ways that put the finest Cathari facilities to shame. What surprised them most were the other aliens. "Welcome to New Geneva," announced the station administrator, a cheerful human named Janet Singh. "We're always happy to receive visitors, especially ones with such interesting stories." As they toured the station, Zixthala counted at least 12 different species living and working alongside the humans. Some were refugees fleeing political problems in their home systems. Others were explorers who had suffered accidents or equipment failures far from home. A few were simply travelers who had decided they liked the human approach to community building. "That's the Vorthak family," Captain Vasquez explained, pointing to a group of large, crystalline beings working in the station's hydroponics bay. Their ship's navigation system failed 8 months ago. Engine trouble stranded them here while waiting for replacement parts. "And those?" Zixthala asked, indicating several small furry creatures operating what appeared to be a restaurant. "The Mixit. They were running from some kind of civil war in their home system, arrived here with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Now they run the best food service in the sector." Every species had a story, and every story involved humans who had stopped whatever they were doing to offer help. Not temporary assistance until the problems were solved, but genuine integration into the community. The station's medical bay could treat 17 different types of biology. The education center offered classes in dozens of languages. The recreation areas had been modified to accommodate species with vastly different physical needs. "How do you manage it all?" Zixthala asked Janet Singh during their tour of the administrative levels. "The resources alone must be enormous." "We manage because everyone contributes," Janet replied. "The Vorthak are amazing engineers. The Mixit know how to grow food in impossible conditions. Every species brings something valuable to the community." But Zixthala suspected it was more than just practical cooperation. Over the 3 days they spent at New Geneva, they watched the humans interact with their alien neighbors. Children from different species played together in the recreation areas. Adults shared meals and stories in the common areas. Old beings from different worlds sat together, watching the stars and talking about their experiences. It was a level of integration that most galactic civilizations took centuries to achieve, if they ever managed it at all. On their final morning at the station, The Cathari rescue ship Truthseeker arrived to bring them home. Commander Velsin, an old friend from the Exploration Corps, greeted them with obvious relief. Zixthala, we feared you were lost forever. The debris field analysis suggested no possible survivors. I should have been lost, they replied, watching through the station's observation windows as human children played with young aliens in the zero-gravity recreation areas. But these humans found me anyway. Commander Velsin studied the human station with the analytical eye of a trained explorer. Impressive for such a primitive species. Their technology is crude but functional. They appear to have achieved stable multi-species cooperation, despite their obvious limitations. I do not think they are limited in the ways we assumed. The Cathari rescue team had brought gifts, as was traditional when meeting a new species. Advanced medical scanners, improved navigation systems, quantum communication devices, technology that would advance human civilization by decades or centuries, but Captain Vasquez politely declined most of the offerings. We appreciate the gesture, she told Commander Velsin during their formal meeting. But we don't feel right accepting payment for helping someone who was in trouble. If you'd like to share some basic star charts and medical information, that would be helpful for future rescue operations. Beyond that, we're happy to have been able to help. Commander Velsin was clearly baffled. Captain, some of this technology could revolutionize your civilization. Surely there must be something you want in return for rescuing our crew member. We want to know that if one of our people gets lost out here someday, someone else might stop to help them too. That's payment enough. Later in private, Commander Velsin expressed their confusion to Zixthala. I do not understand these humans. They had leverage over us, a chance to advance their species significantly. Why did they refuse? Because they did not rescue me to gain advantage, Zixthala replied. They rescued me because I needed help. The idea of asking for payment seems to genuinely confuse them. That makes no logical sense. No, but it makes emotional sense. These humans operate by different principles than most species we have encountered. As they prepared to leave New Geneva, Zixthala faced an unexpected choice. Commander Velsin assumed they would return immediately to Cathari, space to file their mission reports and resume their career in the exploration corps. But Captain Vasquez made a different offer. If you're interested, we're planning to set up more rescue stations in this part of the galaxy, places where ships in trouble can find help, regardless of what species they belong to. We could use someone with your knowledge and experience. The idea was revolutionary. Instead of individual species maintaining their own rescue services for their own people, humans wanted to create a network that would help anyone who needed it. It went against centuries of established galactic practice, but it also made perfect sense. My people would not understand, Zixthala told the captain. Cathari serve the advancement of our own civilization first. I know. That's why we need someone like you to help bridge that gap. Show other species that cooperation benefits everyone. In the end, Zixthala chose to stay. The decision shocked Commander Velsin and required lengthy communications with Cathari authorities. But eventually, they received permission to serve as a liaison between the Human Rescue Network and other galactic civilizations. 6 months later, the joint human Cathari rescue vessel Second Chance launched from New Geneva. It was an ugly ship by conventional standards, built from human engineering principles and Cathari technology. But it was fast, reliable, and equipped to help beings from dozens of different species. Zixthala served as its first non-human commander, leading rescue operations throughout the sector. They saved reptilian traders whose ship had broken down near a dangerous nebula. They evacuated a crystalline research station before a solar flare could destroy it. They pulled an aquatic exploration team from the wreckage of their vessel after a collision with space debris. Each rescue was different, but the principle was always the same. No one should die alone in space if there was any way to prevent it. The network grew slowly at first. Some species were suspicious of human motives, convinced there must be some hidden agenda. Others were simply too set in their traditional ways to consider cooperation with primitive beings. But gradually, the benefits became obvious. Ships traveled more safely knowing help was available if something went wrong. Trade routes expanded into previously dangerous areas because rescue stations provided emergency support. Exploration missions became bolder because the risk of being stranded and forgotten had been dramatically reduced. And through it all, Zixthala marveled at what the humans had accomplished. They had taken their greatest weakness, their emotional need to help others, and turned it into the galaxy's greatest strength. Standing on the bridge of the Second Chance, watching their mixed-species crew work together to save yet another ship in distress, Zixthala reflected on what they had learned about civilization and intelligence. The humans were still primitive by many measures. Their technology was crude, their ships barely held together, their methods often inefficient. But they had discovered something that the galaxy's oldest and most advanced species had missed. The universe was a vast, dangerous place. But it didn't have to be lonely. As long as beings like humans existed, as long as someone was willing to risk everything to help a stranger in need, no one would have to face the darkness alone, and that, Zixthala realized, was the most advanced technology of all.